Welcome everybody. It's Rev. We are doing a little bit of data analysis today on conversion rates for some of the decks that I wanted to look at. Um, this is really just, I guess, more or less a data dump, and I haven't been posting as much lately, just because this game's kind of ass. Frankly, Edison's ass, Goat's ass, everything's ass. So I don't know. I've just been a little bit jaded with the format, but this is going to be an Edison uh, video. Um, and I don't know, like the future of this channel, kind of what I'm going to do. It might be just very seldom posts like this. I kind of want to do some critiques on the Edison ban list and talk about game and card design. Um, just because the way I see it, I don't know. I just don't foresee a lot of these retro formats lasting unless we make some changes. I know that's in stark contrast to a lot of people's opinions. A lot of the biggest YouTubers and community figureheads think that, these retro formats, will die if we implement some sort of ban list changed, which might be true, but that's a topic for another video. It's getting stale. So that's kind of why I haven't really been playing as much or doing as many videos. But the topic of this video is going to be conversions. So what I mean by that is how much a deck is more or less played in a tournament and how many of the top spots it takes. So let's just say Blackwings was at the start of a tournament, 25% of the people entered with Blackwings. You would expect 25% of the top 16 or 4 spots to be Blackwings. If it was just purely random chance. Conversely, if you think Blackwings is a better deck than other decks, you would expect it to be more than 25%. Or if you think Blackwings are shit, you would expect Blackwings in the top 16 conversion to be less than 25%. So that's what we're going for here. So I pulled a bunch of data and we'll kind of go through this just because I know it's a lot of numbers on the screen. And these are the only decks I'm going to look at. I'm looking at Blackwing, Vayu Turbo, Hero Frog, Lightsworn, Dragon Turbo, and then Hero Beat variants. There are other decks you can certainly look at. The issue is sample size, and then also if you go too far back in data, the data is just like kind of at a different point in Edison format. So this goes back to EWCQ number 2, and I'm only pulling data from tournaments where they have over 100 players and the data is available. So this is, I think, late last year EWCQ, or maybe it was, I can't remember. I think it was like October or something like that. So it's recent enough. It's probably all within the last 12 months. So going through the cells here, the participation is just how many people entered the tournament as a whole. So 145 for EWCQ7, 27 were on Blackwing, 24 on Vayu. You get the picture. Um, Down here is the aggregate tournament representation. So it's going to total all of the participation for all, what is it, 6 tournaments here. And you want to aggregate this data like this just because any particular tournament, the results are way too noisy. So there were 723 participants in all of these 6 tournaments combined. 125 out of all 6 tournaments combined played Blackwings. Blackwings, or 125 divided by 723 is 17.29. So out of all of these tournaments, the aggregate tournament representation was 17.29% for Blackwings, just under 16 for Vayu, and again, you get the picture for each of these. Next, what I did in these cells over here was look at the top 16 spots and how many spots were taken by each respective deck out of these 6. So what this number means is in EWCQ 7, 1 of the top 16 was Blackwing, 3 were Vayu, 3 were Frog, 0 Lightsworn, and Lightsworn Pure, by the way, 0 Dragon Turbo, 0 Hero Beat. And then, of course, the last step is to aggregate those, sum them up, and see what the representation was in top 16, which is this. So how to read this again is 16 out of the top 16 of all of these tournaments. So you again have to take into consideration that there are 6 tournaments. So the number is 96. So what you do is you take the total number of tops for Blackwing, which was 16 out of all 6 of these tournaments. There were 96 top 16 spots out of 6 tournaments, since 16 times 6 is 96. And then the number that allows you to arrive at is, out of all 6 tournaments, 16.67% out of those were Blackwings. It was about 21% for value, 11.46 for frogs, so on and so forth. So then, what the obvious next step is going to be is, what is the, conversion of those? By chance, you would expect Blackwings to be 17.29% of the top spots. It only got 16.67, so it actually underconverted by about a half of a percent, by a negative 0.62% here. So that's what this nominal difference is. It's this number minus this number. So top 16 representation minus its aggregate representation. So it's going to be, for 4.93, 20.83 divided by aggregate tournament representation. So in this case, out of these tournaments, value outperformed massively. It converted a lot. Same with Hero Frogs. Lightsworn underconverted. Dragon Turbo was almost exactly converted. It didn't overperform or underperform. And then Hero Beat massively underconverted. Um, Now this last number here is the outperformance ratio, I'm calling it, which is just this number divided by this number. And the reason why you would want to divide in this case as opposed to just subtract is, for smaller numbers, like let's look for instance at like Hero Frogs. Since the representation is smaller, your the difference of 3 on a base of 8 is a lot different than, the difference of about 5 on a base of 15. So the smaller the number gets, the wider the error is, if that makes sense. So to normalize that a little bit, you just divide it. So any number below 1 is underconverting, any number above 1 is overconverting. And it helps normalize for lower representation rates, just because, again, like a 1% difference on a 2% representation leads to a lot more, or like a negative 2% difference on like a roughly 3% representation um, leads to like a very, very wide error. So you divide to normalize that a little bit. So let's just look at it again, and we'll uh, go through a few other things on this. So I just want to summarize before I kind of go through this, because I'm going to do basically this for top 32 as well to even widen the sample size and reduce the error. But mainly the takeaways from this are going to be these cells here. So nominal difference and then outperformance ratio. So nominal difference, a negative number means that deck underconverted. A positive number, like for instance value turbo, means it overconverted. Conversely, the outperformance ratio, any number under 1 means the deck did not convert fully, or it underconverted. Any number above 1, and the higher the better, of course, above 1, means the deck overconverted and outperformed, just what you would expect by random chance. So let's take a look. Surprisingly enough, Blackwing's underconverted for a very large sample size. Vayu massively overconverted. Hero Frogs massively overconverted. Lightsworn massively, massively underconverted. I mean, it did really bad. Dragon Turbo was right square on where you'd expect it to be just by random chance. And then Hero Beat massively, massively underconverted. So, I'd say, if you change these numbers up even a little bit, like even if you added like a 3 here for Blackwings, it suddenly jumps to just like basically what you'd expect by chance. So, this is in line with just pure chance. This is in line with pure chance despite it being a very small sample size of 4. Um, but really the key takeaway here, in my opinion, is that Vayu massively overperformed and Hero Frog massively overperformed and Lightsworn massively underperformed and Hero Beat massively underperformed. What you'd expect just by pure chance. Um, Now, after I did this, I was, wondering how much variance there was in this, just because the sample size for less played decks is very small. I mean, if you look at it again, there was a single Lightsworn deck out of 723, or no, I guess 96 top spots that hit top 16. So that leaves a lot of room for error. So what I did was did it for the top 32 as well. And here's the output. Everything stays the same. And if you were paying attention, you should be able to understand what these numbers are telling you as well. So in this case, Blackwing slightly overconverted. I would just say, in the outperformance ratio as well, it's slightly out converted or over converted, whatever you want to say it, outperformed. But it's pretty much in line with what you'd expect by random chance. Vayu massively over converted. Hero Frog massively over converted. In this instance, if you look at the top 32, Lightsworn over converted, Dragon Turbo over converted, and then Hero Beat massively under converted. So uh, I'll give you a few of my takeaways with this and leave some points for discussion and let me know what you guys think. I mean, I think if there's one thing that you can take away is that Hero Beat's really bad. I mean, it is just a bad deck. Um, so don't play it. Next is Blackwing. I think this number might be a little bit misleading just because I know this is a controversial opinion, but I think at the highest levels of play, Blackwings is one of the hardest decks to play, like bar none. I think it gives you a shit ton of free wins at lower levels of play and attracts a lot of very bad players. So I think this number is a little bit misleading, but to me, frankly, I mean, this does tell you something about the just base power level of a deck. The other thing I think is that Blackwing, and I've said this a lot, is being built wrong. There are just too many deck building errors at this point. So I think if that gets cleaned up a little bit and people start using builds like I've been using, or that Masha have been using, they'll just be better off. No questions asked. I mean, and then like Vayu, I don't think this should come as a surprise to anybody. I think this deck has been solved. I think it's 39 to 38 cards solved, and it's been that way for about a year. Um, so I think that's why it overconverts so much. It's just a better, more refined deck. It's got a better side deck. When I was looking at the decks with Blackwings, they're just all over the place. I mean, I know everyone says, "Oh, Blackwings are solved," but like even the best Blackwing players are making a lot of deck building errors, and some of them have very, very bad side decks too. Um, and then Hero Frogs. Um, this I do want to spend some time on first as well because I think Hero Frogs were being built very poorly for a long time too. So it really, really surprises me that they overconvert this hard. And it also surprises me because the deck is so fucking hard to play. I mean, I would expect if you put a gun to my head and said, "Hey, like predict, which decks are going to underconvert," I would have my first pick would have been Hero Frog. Um, just because it's not an easy deck, and maybe that just means that better players are playing it in this sample so that it overconverts and it's more of a skill thing than a deck thing. But I don't know. I mean, maybe just I underestimate how good the deck is, or I overestimate how hard it is. But I just very much would have expected this to be an underperformer because it's first relatively popular and more just the skill thing. Like I think it's just easy to play this suboptimally. Like I think Blackwing and Hero Frog are like at high levels of play very very comparable in difficulty. At low levels of play, Blackwings is super easy, and Hero Frog is also still very very hard. So that's what like the big difference is. Value, I think once you get like some reps in, it's pretty easy at all levels of play. I mean, there are things you can fuck up, but I think after like your first 50 games with value, like you just get it. Like you don't really need to be that good to play the deck and like know the comment setups. Lightsworn's a total noob deck, but I would take this number and this number with a little bit of skepticism, just because when we're getting to these last like few decks, the sample size is very very low. So like if we look at like total tournament representation over 6 tournaments, Lightsworn was only 20 decks, Dragon Turbo was only 30, Um, Hero Beat variants, which includes Diva Hero Beat and just regular Hero Beat, was 70. So like I think anything less than 50, I'd almost just discard like this. Like I don't think this is very meaningful. I mean, Dragon Turbo did over-represent, but this again isn't a deck that just like a random scrub is going to load and go into a tournament. So I think there's a skill component to this output, and it's also probably skewed just by like a very, very low sample size. Like again, only 30 Dragon Turbo entrants out of these 723 entrants, and then only 11 got top 16. And like Lightsworn is even smaller, so only 20 pure Lightsworn and only 6 in the top 32. Or 11 top 32 for Dragon Turbo. So yeah, again, when the data gets this small, I'm really not sure I'd want to even talk too much on this. And then Hero Beat, I do think with a sample size of 70 um, in total tournament entrants, and then only 14 making top 32. So it's not just top 16. We're expanding this to top 32, and it massively underperformed. I mean, massively, massively. So I mean, if there's anything to take away from this, like my summary would be that Hero Beat just objectively is a bad deck. I just don't think it's good. You don't get enough free wins. It's too fair. Um, it's too conditional. You don't have pot of duality. It's also being built wrong. Um, the next thing would be that Hero Frog, whether or not it's more of a skill component on who's playing the deck, I think is really, really good. Um, and I'm completely blown away with how well once you expand to top 32 how much this outperforms. Um, and then Vayu also surprises me. Like I really thought Blackwing and Vayu would have been very similar, and then Blackwing to me, I mean, I think it is somewhat of a skill thing, but the thing with Blackwing is I do think that it has like hard lose conditions. So with Blackwing, the way it's being built properly, you kind of just lose to Starlight Road on occasion. You lose to um, I guess uh, what was I going to say? Like Blackwing interruptions, you lose to bricks, or Blackwing summon interruptions, you lose to like banishes. So like, I mean, I think there are like a decent amount of hard lose conditions. Um, you lose to like consecrated light, um, and like decree really hard. So like, I think Blackwing, like the more I've played it since I started mostly with like Vayu Turbo, um, I think Blackwing does get worse post side than Vayu Turbo. So I think that's something to consider. And also the skill difference. Like there just aren't that many good Blackwing players out there. Like elite Blackwing players. There might be some decent ones, but like actual elite Blackwing players. Then also when you couple that with the fact that like this deck does have a little bit more trouble than Vayu post side, um, I think that explains probably a decent amount of the reason that it underconverts. Um, Vayu, I do think has a lot of really great side tools. It's the best oppression deck. It's the best deck dev deck. I do think the big weakness with Vayu is that it's very RPS dependent, but it also doesn't really get that weak to anything post side. Like similar things happen sometimes with frogs where there's like a certain side card that works like against one part of your deck and then not other parts. And if you draw the one part when your opponent has the other part, then your just side deck doesn't do shit for you. So um, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you in the next one, if there is a next one.